Today, I'd like to consider what I've noticed to be similarities in the aesthetic and overall, how shall I put it, overall moral perspective of, on the one hand, C.S. Lewis in his fiction, with particular reference to the Narnia Chronicles, uh, the famous and celebrated Chronicles of Narnia, and also to, well, several movies of M. Night Shyamalan, who is not really much celebrated, only in smaller circles, is much more reviled, much more made fun of than celebrated. But I've remained an adherent of Shyamalan, with some criticisms, some acknowledgments of him, you know, falling off here or there in this way or that way. But I have a much stronger adherence to Shyamalan and a belief in him as a cinematic auteur than I think most respectable people do. Now, in his early days, Shyamalan was acknowledged and celebrated. He was a new big thing with The Sixth Sense and with Unbreakable, and even a little bit with Signs. Although after Signs, it seemed like some of the bloom was disappearing from the rose for some critics. It still did really well at the box office, but it was with his fourth movie, The Village, that it seems like they really, which is also my favorite movie of his, that it seems like they really started falling away, and then after that he sort of became this object of scorn and ridicule nonstop for several years, until his release of The Visit, which was in 2015, I think, where he got his mojo back as far as critics go, as far as box office goes, and he's sort of made a little bit of a comeback since then. I'm sort of off and on with some of his more recent works. However, I just want to stick right now to what I see as a very strong thematic similarity between Lewis's work, Lewis's fiction, particularly in the Narnia Chronicles, and Shyamalan's cinema. What I see working in both of these artists, Lewis as being a writer, Shyamalan being a filmmaker, and screenwriter and director and so forth. What I see going on in both of them very strongly, a theme that really dominates in a lot of their work, is this notion of enchantment and the loss of enchantment. And what I see in both of them is this desire to critique very strongly those who they both Lewis and Shyamalan hold guilty of having drained the world of its enchantment, which for both of them is, I think, an essential part of the actual reality of the world. For both of them, the supernatural is an indisputable part of things, and it is the where true reality resides, as opposed to the materialistic conception of life, which just sees anything that's tangible, anything that's can be apprehended through the senses, or that one can see through some empirical kind of formulation. Um, Both are very critical of materialism, and in movies like particularly like Split and Glass, but also in The Sixth Sense and Unbreakable, that you see this notion of, for lack of a better word, magic. Call it what you will, whether it's magic, whether it's the supernatural, whether it's an understanding that transcends the physical, that transcends the material. The boy's ability to see dead people and understand the ways in which they died, for example, in The Sixth Sense. The notion in Unbreakable of Bruce Willis discovering that he's got superheroic powers, and that he was meant to become a superhero, which is later returned to in both the movies Split and Glass, where in Split we see another example of a character like that, but one who's much more sinister, more of a super villain, the Horde, in the person of the character who is suffering from DID, and who later becomes, grows into himself as this supervillain, this beast. But nevertheless, who, even though he's depicted as evil, we also see him as in some way having won this victory over the material and transcended himself. And in all of these movies, we have naysayers. We have people who seek to put the world to sleep again, who seek to come out and say, no, you're not a Superman. You're just a man. You just imagine these things. And there's even an organization of people who are, one gathers, from some power, sent from some powerful entity, some powerful and evil entity, to sort of put a lid on this notion, this mentality of the supernatural, of the magical, of, again, however you define it, whatever word you use to define it, isn't really so important as acknowledging it and believing in it and knowing that it is real. So we see this also in the Narnia Chronicles again and again. Those of you familiar with C.S. Lewis's The Chronicles of Narnia, if you haven't read them for a while, I suggest rereading them as an adult. They are just as enjoyable, if not more so. There are little subtle things that you discover, or that I discovered, were there as an adult, that as a kid I just glossed over because it just, as a kid it didn't occur to me to notice things like that. In Prince Caspian, there's an aside between two of the children, between Lucy and Susan, where Lucy says to Susan something like, "I just had this terrible thought. We're living in Narnia now, where those beasts who could talk are now just pretending to be beasts again. What if that happened to men? What if in our world, men, meaning people in general, suddenly retreated from their humanity and just behaved like beasts?" And this is just an aside, something that Lucy says as an aside to her sister Susan. and but and it's not really followed up on, but it's obviously there for a reason. It's there to make you think, yep, that's what's actually that is exactly what is going on, in our 20th century, in the 20th century, where in which Lewis wrote. Little things like that are everywhere. There's lots of things that are very interesting little asides like that maybe if you're one of the more astute child readers, you pick up on them, or they mean something to you. But in my case, I didn't. That just over my head as a 10-year-old. But I what you find in the Narnia books over and over again, and I would really like to maybe, I think it might be worthwhile for either for me or for someone. I don't know if it's going to be. I don't know if this is something I want to devote my time necessarily to. But I think that this is like dissertation material. This is something that if I were in grad school, I would this would appeal to me as a possible dissertation subject. Over and over again, we have characters believing in, the deep magic, as it's called in the land of Narnia. But you have these other characters who either, just deny it, or just think it's rubbish, think that it's something that only fools and children could possibly believe in. It's just, fairy tales. Or you also have characters who hypnotize the others into thinking that there's really nothing to the magic. There is an especially powerful scene in the Silver Chair, which is my favorite of all of the Narnia books. It was my favorite as a kid, and it's still my favorite now. I just think it's really good. I think that just as far as the story goes, it's one of the best. It's one of the most riveting and most powerful, and also most fun to read, as far as the events that take place and the adventure that you go on with the characters over the course. I mean, you really go everywhere. You go from this dreadful modern school that you can tell Lewis detests, that he's just unsparingly making fun of, and then you go with the children leaving that school into the into the realm of Narnia, and you start off on this mountain with Aslan, this world beyond the world, kind of like what heaven is in Narnia, and then the children get blown through the air to Narnia, and that sequence itself is so cool, and then there's an adventure that takes them to the land of the giants, and then to great danger, and then they escape, and they end up going underground. So you go through the air, you're going in through the wilderness, you're going underground. This goes everywhere. This book just takes you everywhere. But there's a scene when they are underground and they are meeting up with the villain in the story, which is the lady of the green kirtle, and she's this beautiful enchantress, but who is actually, of course, evil, and who's holding a lot of people under her spell. And the children and their companion, the Marshwiggle Puddleglum, are and also the prince, who's just been liberated from the titular silver chair, and who's remembered who he is after being under this enchantment by the lady. Well, the lady's not done yet. She starts to play on her lute, and she throws some green stuff into the fire, and so the air gets filled with this. I called it enchant. the way I'm using enchantment is kind of at cross purposes right now. What I mean by the witch's enchantment is kind of a hypnosis. It's putting them under and making them ignore the things that are enchanted about the world. She sweet talks them into thinking, you think that there's a place up, you think that there's a place called outside? They're underground. They're in this underground realm right now. You think there's a place called outside? And wait a minute, you think there's a sun? And what is this sun exactly? I think when you're thinking of the sun, what you're doing is you're just using your imagination. You see a lamp, and you say, "Oh, there's a great lamp in the sky," and that's the sun. She really has them because she really has them hypnotized into believing that the things they know to be true aren't really true. And there's so much of a parallel in the movie Glass with this organization that's come, and there's even a lady in that movie, an attractive enchantress, sweet talking, hypnotizing kind of lady who goes around to all of these people who know that they have superpowers, and she just sort of says, no, you've just been, you're just you're suffering from delusions, unfortunately. And she convinces them of it and talks them out of it, until they see the truth. There's so many parallels there. It's quite incredible. And what ultimately liberates them, interestingly enough, is when the Puddleglum, the Marshwiggle, says to the lady, "Look, I know that Narnia. If Narnia doesn't exist, then by golly, if Narnia is just a dream, I'd rather live in that dream than be here. If this is what you call reality, just living in this a subterranean place where there's no light from the sun and no hope and whatsoever." And then he goes and stamps out the fire with his bare foot, with his webbed foot, and great cost to himself. But that breaks her spell, and she transforms into what she really was all along, which is this serpent, this vile green serpent, going under the guise of a beautiful lady. So these parallels are just really interesting, and I don't think I've heard anyone articulate them before. I don't think Shyamalan professes any kind of faith that I'm aware of. Of course, Lewis is best known for being a Christian apologist and a sort of Anglo-Catholic, I guess, ultimately is what you would define him as, or maybe just an Anglican. I don't know, just a traditional Anglican. But that aside, there really is this interesting parallel, and wanted to put that out there to anybody who's interested in these kinds of things. So thank you very much for watching, and leave your comments below.